McFarland, your host. If you're a regular viewer, you know that Cross My Heart is devoted to encouraging women to love God and to live His Word. But once in a while, especially on Mondays, we get in the kitchen or someplace around the house and I'll share a recipe or an organizational tip or something like that. And so this month, in honor of the month of March, I am bringing you some cookies in honor of St. Patrick's Day. Now, a little bit of history on St. Patrick's Day that you may or may not know. And I am a Scottish lass. I think my maiden name Adkins was Scottish, but certainly my married name McFarland is indeed Scottish, but we can still celebrate an Irish holiday. And so any excuse for a party or a reason to whip up some yummy food. So anyway, St. Patrick, in case you don't know about him, it's interesting to think about all the ways that we celebrate St. Patrick's Day in our modern era with making everything green, everything from beer to pancakes to donuts and all this kind of thing. It's kind of shifted quite a ways from its earlier roots. St. Patrick actually died in the 5th century, but he was originally British, and so he was captured and enslaved and taken to Ireland, where he later escaped, got away, would later become a Catholic priest, and then he decided to go back to Ireland, where he won over many of the Druids there in that culture to Christianity. And because of his investment in their lives and changing them spiritually, he became the patron saint of Ireland, and this feast was held in his honor. And so that's the beginnings of St. Patrick's Day. Quite a difference from kind of the party, parade kind of place that we celebrate it today. But it's an opportunity to put on green, to eat something green. My earliest memories of St. Patrick's Day are making sure that I wore something green to school so that nobody would pinch me. So we've come a long way since then. Well, as I got ready to share this recipe, and I kind of adapted this, as I often do my recipes, from one that I found on a store brand oat box a few years ago, and I've changed it up with some different things to kind of make it my own. But I changed out the chocolate chips for M&Ms to make it sort of a seasonal cookie. And so here's my idea for sort of repurposing your Christmas M&Ms. So I love to buy Christmas M&Ms. I bought this big container in December. It was filled with red and green M&Ms, and I put them in a little candy dish that my kids, even as adults, always go to and lift the lid expecting there to be M&Ms there. And I put a few in little containers to take to my ladies' Christmas brunch, and just had M&Ms around the house for different things. And there were still quite a few left, but even after we munched on them and enjoyed them. So tucked those away in the freezer, pulled them back out, and I sorted them. So the ones that are left in here, I don't know if you can see, there's just a few, but here's the red ones that are remaining after all of our munching and enjoying. I sorted out the green ones. And so here's my great idea to repurpose, recycle, reuse your M&Ms from Christmas. They're red and green. So use the red ones in February to make Valentine's Day cookies, and use the green ones in March to make St. Patrick's Day cookies. I shared this idea with a friend, and she said, "Oh my goodness, you are the most," and I was expecting her to say creative woman I know, but she said frugal. And I thought, I'll take frugal. I'll take that as a compliment. I don't mind being called frugal as well as creative. So that's my M&M story. I'm going to set these aside because they're the last thing to be put together. We're going to start with our dry ingredients. And so the first thing we're going to add is 1.5 cups of flour. These M&M cookies we've got a PDF ready for you, and you can download it if you follow the notes below. If you do make these, we'd love to know what you think about them. We would love to know maybe who you're planning to share them with. So you always want to be sure you level off the measuring of your dry ingredients. So I've got 1.5 cups of flour. Set the flour aside here. This recipe, when I started lining up all my ingredients, my starch, I thought, wow, this is really a lot, but it'll go together quickly here. 1/2 teaspoon of salt, and then 1 teaspoon of baking soda. I grabbed great baking powder instead of soda, so I'm going to change this out. I'll be right back. Okay, I need 1 teaspoon of baking soda, Put that in here. I'm just going to move those ingredients over as I make them. But make sure that you get that soda and salt mixed in well with the flour. So there's that. It takes a lot of oats. I was surprised with this original recipe when I found it on the back of the oats box, how many oats that it actually calls for. 2 3/4 cups. So there's 1, there's 2. I'm going to use, I have a 3/4 measuring cup. So there's all the oats. And then the last thing that might be just a little surprising is the cinnamon. And even though I'm not making this with the raisins and the cinnamon and sort of that leaning, I still leave it in even though I'm doing it with the chocolate flavor to it, because I just think it adds just a little bit of something to the flavor. So a little bit of cinnamon in there as well. Okay, and so that's all the dry ingredients. Again, I'm going to go ahead and give these a little mix, get them mixed up. And then we're going to jump into creaming our butter and our sugar. Now, I have had my 1 stick of butter sitting out most of the day to make sure that it's at room temperature. I don't want to melt it, and I don't want it to be too cold. I don't want my batter to be so stiff that I can't mix it, but I also do not want my cookies to run all over the cookie sheet and be little pancakes. So let your butter get to room temperature. My other little trick is when I adapted the recipe to do it like I wanted it, I exchanged some of the butter for peanut butter, because we're just peanut butter fans at our house. And I think a little bit of peanut butter in the batter just gives the cookies a special little flavor. There's nothing better than peanut butter and chocolate, and you add in a little bit of oats, another favorite ingredient, and it is just delicious. I can't wait for you to try it. I hope you will. I'm going to get the butter creamed here, and then I'm going to go ahead and add 3/4 cup of peanut butter. So my little trick to get the peanut butter out easy is to go ahead and sort of rinse the measuring cup before you dip it into the peanut butter. So let me run over to my sink and do that. I'll be right back. There's something about having that measuring cup a little wet that makes that easier to work with. So I'm going to go ahead, start filling up this 3/4 cup measuring cup while the butter is getting nice and blended. Because it's room temperature, no problem there. Get the peanut butter, I think maybe 1 more scoop and we will do it. When the kids were home and I made cookies a lot more often, sometimes I would just buy the store brand peanut butter to do my baking, but I don't bake as much anymore, so I don't keep that around. So my good old delicious Jif gets to go into the recipes as well. So now we're finished with the peanut butter. I'm sort of moving things over as I do them. Okay, let's stop this. You can, oops, there's a little bit that didn't get mixed in, but it will go with the peanut butter. You can use a little hand mixer if you do not have a stand mixer. I love the stand mixer. I cooked and baked for years without one, and then one year at Christmas, my husband just surprised me and got me this lovely mixer that I have absolutely loved. A big time saver, because you could be doing other things while it's doing the mixing work. Set that aside. Let me grab a towel here, get the peanut butter off my fingers. I'm gonna put this down, let both the peanut butter and the regular butter start to get to mix together really well. I'm probably gonna need this spatula, and I'll use the butter as my plate stand there, my spoon stand sort of. Let that get mixed in. We're gonna go ahead and add in the sugar. My recipe calls for 1/4 cup of regular sugar and 3/4 cup of brown sugar. Use this to level it off. That's coming together nice. 1/4 cup of regular sugar. And then we need 3/4 cup of brown sugar. 1, 2, and 3. Okay, Okay, so peanut butter, sugar, brown sugar. We're gonna let this get mixed together. I'm gonna stop it and break down the sides just to make sure that all the sugar is getting mixed in nicely. I've got that nice peanut butter smell happening, and it smells oh so good. So that's getting mixed together nicely. Get everything cleaned off of my spatula. Now, a couple of other interesting ingredients that are gonna go in next. We're gonna add a teaspoon of vanilla extract, not too surprising there. And if you've watched me cook before, you know that I'm a big fan of real vanilla. Even though I am frugal, as my friend will testify, I do not use imitation vanilla. So a teaspoon of vanilla, and then sort of a surprising ingredient for you might be a tablespoon of molasses. There, it's a new jar, and it was hard to open, but I got it. Did I get a tablespoon out? I don't think I did. So let me find a measuring spoon. I need a tablespoon of this. I'm gonna stop the mixture because I just don't trust myself not to make a mess here. So 2 tablespoons is what I'm doing. It's very thick. It's very pungent. Molasses has a very distinct smell and a very distinct flavor. And I was surprised when I saw it in this recipe, but when I made it per the recipe the first time, it really was delicious. So we're just gonna go with it. Gonna let that kind of drip off a little bit, get most of it out of the way. Put the mixer back down. Let's get that all mixed together. So we've got the molasses and the vanilla. I'm gonna mix this well, and then we're gonna add in our eggs. Now I'm gonna go ahead and preheat my oven to 350. Get that going. Make sure I don't have my baking stone in there. I do like to bake my cookies always on a baking stone. They just seem to get just a nice texture, delicious, and they're not, sometimes on a different cookie sheet, they may get too brown on the bottom and not done all the way through. So I baked on a Pampered Chef baking stone for years, and I just love it, love it. Would never bake on anything else. Okay, I think we've got that all mixed together. I'm gonna go ahead and do my eggs. Now, probably you already know this tip, but always, always, always break your eggs in a separate bowl, because if you do get a little bit of shell in there, as I just did, so I'd like to say I did that on purpose to demonstrate the reason that I'm always saying break it into a bowl, but it does make it easier to fish it out, because if you get a shell in your batter, it's going to be that much more difficult, maybe even to see it, but then certainly to also fish it out. Recipes usually say to mix well after each addition. I'm not sure why, but that's what we'll do. Mix it up a little. Now let's get our other egg. Break that. No shells this time, so success there. Drop it in. And that is the end of our ingredients with everything except the M&Ms and the chocolate chips. So we're gonna get this all well blended. I'm gonna do it kind of fast to get all of the egg mixed into the rest of the liquid. Let's just rake down the sides a little. I'm seeing some egg that sort of got up the sides, and I want it all mixed in before we start to add our dry ingredients. I'm doing this on high to get it mixed together well, but when we start to add the dry ingredients here, I'm gonna turn it down to low. So lock that in place. That's getting mixed in. Here we go. I've got a little bit of batter, more batter than I wanted to leave behind on my spatula. So I'm just gonna rake that off. Who wants to wash a part of a cookie down the drain and waste that? I am that frugal girl. So that's all mixed in. Now, I'm gonna go to low and just sort of gradually add my dry ingredients just a little bit at a time. Get them mixed in. If you're doing this with a hand mixer, you're probably just gonna need to add this part by hand. It'll start to get a little stiff, but you can just do it and give it some elbow grease and get it all mixed in. So almost there. Okay, always like, even though it's my recipe says to use a large bowl, I like to use my big mixing bowl for this, because then I've got a handle when I start to transfer. It just makes it a little easier. Okay, so that is all mixed together. Kind of thick, which of course it should be. But I'm going to use my wooden spoon. I'm going to go ahead and unplug this. Anytime I'm messing with the beaters, I know it's turned off, but there's just something psychological that tells me to take that extra safety precaution and make sure that my mixer is unplugged. So I'm going to I see a little bit of flour that still needs mixed in. I'm just sort of going to do this by hand. The cookie batter is a little bit thick, which it should be. Now what we're going to do now is add in 1 cup of my green M&Ms. Now, if you didn't save any Christmas M&Ms, you could just go to the store and buy St. Patrick's Day M&Ms. I'm sure they have them because the Mars candy bar people, I think they're the ones that make M&Ms, will not miss a holiday. They'll have ones for Easter. They'll have ones for every holiday. So I'm going to put in a cup of M&Ms and then just sort of supplement that a little bit because, you know, really, can you have too much chocolate in a cookie? I also just have semi-sweet chocolate chips, and I'm adding a 1/2 cup of those. So if you don't want to mess with the M&Ms, you can just add all chocolate chips to your recipe. So we're going to get these mixed in. It's just going to be so pretty to look at that batter for St. Patrick's Day and see the green. I'm going to hold it up so you can look at it. In fact, I'm going to bring it around to the camera and get up real close and hold that in. Doesn't that look nice? All those pretty festive green M&Ms for St. Patrick's Day. They worked for Christmas when they had their red partners, and now they work beautifully for St. Patrick's Day. So these are mixed in pretty well. Here we go. They're going to be very M&M-y. I like lots of additives to my cookies. So we're going to get this out of the way. I'm going to bring over that baking stone that I mentioned before. And by the time that oven is preheated, we will have our first batch of cookies ready to go in the oven. Now I have 2 baking stones, so I am constantly putting a batch in. When that one comes out, I've got another one ready to go. I let those cool a little bit, take them off, get the next batch ready. Now you're going to bake these at about 10 to 12 minutes. When you take them out, they are going to be light brown around the edges. They may look just a little like they're not quite done in the middle, but don't worry about that because they'll sit on the baking stone or the sheet that you're cooking it on, which has absorbed some of the heat, and they will continue to bake just a little bit even after you take them out of the oven. You don't want them to be overbaked. Nobody likes, at least I don't like, a cookie that's overdone and hard. I like a nice soft chewy cookie, and that's what these will be. So I'm using a bigger scoop, so these are going to be just a little bit bigger cookie, not quite a cowboy cookie, but a nice little size. So I am looking forward to sharing these with some people that I love. My husband when he heard I was baking cookies, it made him very happy. So he may be the Scotsman, but he will eat cookies that are made in honor of an Irish holiday anyway. So this will be a great treat for him with a glass of skim milk. Somehow if you eat skim milk, but with a decadent dessert, it just all evens out, right? No problem. So because they're bigger, I won't put as many on the stone. And there you go. They are ready to go in the oven. Let me hold this up so you can see. Here's what they look like, ready to go in the oven. And then I will show a picture after they come out. So I'm going to put these in the oven after it preheats, and we'll be right back later. I'll take a photo and drop that photo in, but I'll just say goodbye for now. Thanks so much for spending part of your day with us. Happy St. Patrick's Day from all of us here at Cross My Heart Ministry.